Hi guys, I'm Demon Killer, and in this video we are going to walk through how we can install Boss Linux on our computers. So a few months back I did a video reviewing Boss Linux. The link of that video is in the description. You can go ahead and check that out. In that video I had touched briefly on the installation procedure. However, I did not go in depth of installing Boss Linux. So in this video we are going to address that topic of installing Boss Linux from start to end. So in that video I had installed Boss Linux physically on my computer. However, in this video I'm going to install Boss Linux in Virtualbox, and the reason for that is both users who want to install Boss Linux on their machines physically, as well as users who want to install Boss Linux as a virtual operating system can benefit. So in this video my host OS is Ubuntu 20.04 LTS, and the next step, the first step that we are going to do, which is common for both users, is to grab our ISO. So first we want to go to our web browser and search for Boss Linux. And if you want to read about Boss Linux, you can click on the home page, but I'm going to click on downloads, and that will lead us to the download page directly. Here we have 4 ISOs which we can download. So this is the Boss desktop, which is a complete distribution in itself. It comes with a desktop environment. The other ISOs are basically the educational version of Boss Linux and the server version, and we do not want to talk about that in this video. These are the topic for other videos. So in this video we will be focusing on Boss 8 Unnati, the full desktop environment version, full distribution, and you want to click on download, and it is around 2.9 gigs, so it takes some time to download. So you want to save file and click on OK, but I'm not going to click on OK because it will take some time to download, and to save time I already have downloaded Boss Linux in my computer. So this is how it should look in your downloads folder. So what you want to do is now ensure that Virtualbox is installed if you want to install Boss Linux on Virtualbox. So I have 2 videos on how to install Virtualbox on Ubuntu 20.04 LTS, as well as older versions of Ubuntu. You can go ahead and check them out. So in this video I'm assuming at this point that you have Virtualbox installed. For those of you who want to install Boss Linux in Virtualbox, the rest of the users can skip all the way to this particular timestamp which you are seeing on the screen, where the actual installation begins. So now I'm going to do some settings. So what we want to do is click on new, and we want to type in Boss Linux. I'm also going to type in the version, and this is based on Debian, so I'm going to select Debian 64-bit, click on next. This is a heavy distribution in my opinion. It uses the Cinnamon desktop, so I'm going to allocate 2048, which is 2 gigs of RAM, 1024 into 2. And if you have lesser RAM, like 4 gigs only installed physically, then you can go ahead with 1 gig, but I've got 8 gigs, so I'm going to allocate 2 gigs, sorry. So we're going to click on next, and we are going to create a VDI, which is a VirtualBox disk image. Click on next, and we want the storage type to be dynamically allocated, and we are going to click on next. And most Linux installation work fine with 15 gigs of ROM, so we are going to click on create. Now what we want to do is go to settings, and we want to go to system. If your processor has 8 threads like I have here, you can allocate 2 CPUs. However, if you have lesser threads like 4 threads, 1 CPU is fine. We are coming to display, and the graphics controller is going to be VBox VGA. The reason for that is it gives us a full screen mode of Boss Linux. In storage, we are going to mount our ISO. So we are going to click on the left icon with the plus sign, which is a circular disk, and it says add optical drive. We're going to click on that and click on create, and then you should go to your downloads folder where you downloaded the Boss Linux ISO, and select your ISO, and then you want to click on open, and you want to click on choose, and your ISO is mounted, and you want to click on OK. For those of you who want to install it physically on your hard drive, you want to make a bootable USB, I have a video on that, how you can make a bootable USB on Linux. And alternatively, if you are on Windows, you can use Rufus or Balena Etcher. Both work fine. So now that we have ensured that we have our virtual operating system ready, and those of you who are installing on a physical machine, you have your USB devices ready, we are going to plug in our USB device. And in this case, for those of you who want to try out on Virtualbox, you're going to click on start, and Boss Linux should start, and we should be greeted by this page, both users, right? So we want to click on, we have a couple of options here. Boss Live, it will boot into the live environment, and that will only last till the next reboot. So we want to click on graphical install without wasting much time, and once we do that, we should be greeted by this page. So initially, like I told you, Boss Linux is based on Debian, so the installation is going to be pretty much similar to Debian. Let me just turn this to full screen, and this is how it should look like. You're going to click on continue. You can select your location and your keyboard layout, and it will detect your CD-ROM and stuff like that. So we're going to give it some time. This installation is faster and more simple than Debian, so many new users who come from Windows may find this pretty intuitive, not as hard as installing Debian. Once this is done, you can type in your host name, what you want to make your computer look on your network. So I like to keep it similar with my username. You can keep different names, but I always recommend keeping it similar to your username. And you can continue your username for your account. What we created just now was our root account, and this is our user account. So we're going to click on continue, and we want to type in our password. And once you set your password, it will configure the crock and detect disk, and now is the time where we want to partition disk. So once the partitioner is set up, I'll walk you through the disk partitioning system. So for new users, if you are on Virtualbox, you can use the guided entire disk setup and click on continue. And if you're physically installing it on your hard disk, you want Boss Linux as your default operating system, which means you don't want to use any other system with Boss Linux, and it also can mean that you want to wipe out Windows or Ubuntu or any other OS you are running at the moment and use Boss Linux as your primary OS. You can use this guided entire disk. However, I'm going to click on manual, and this will work for both the VM users as well as those who are physically installing Boss Linux. Why do VM users need manual? Because what this guided partitioning does is that it creates your home directory inside your root directory, and that is very Linux friendly, or that's not nice actually. So we want our home directory separate from the root directory. So I'm going to click on manual and continue. So here I'm going to click on this and select your hard disk. So we created a 15 gigs hard disk here, so we are going to select that. And once your hard disk is selected, you want to create a new partition table, so click on yes and continue. And now we have this free space which we want to partition. So first of all, we are going to make a boot partition. So we are going to click on continue, create a new partition, and boot partition is 200 MB for boot partition is enough, and we want to click on continue. And the type of partition is going to be primary, and it's going to be at the beginning of this space. Once that is done, we want to set the mount point as boot. So here is our boot mount point, and once that is done, we can click on done setting up the partition and click on one more thing, the file type is going to be ext4. So you want to click on continue, and we have our boot partition. Now we are going to click on a free space again and create around 8 gigs of root partition. So click on continue, create a new partition, and here I can give like 8.9 gigs. That's fine, totally fine. It's up to you how much you want to give depending on where you are installing. So in a VM, when we are dealing with just 15 gigs, this much is fine. On a system where you have probably 1 TB of space or 500 gigs of space, you can do the ratios and proportions and then resize a partition in the similar way. So we're going to click on continue, and this is going to be primary. This can be primary because we don't have any other. Why do you want it to be logical? Because if you are doing something like dual boot, you want to save up to, because you see what happens is you only have 4 primary partitions. So you want to save a few primary partitions, but here Boss Linux is our only OS that we are talking about, so that's why we selected primary. And this is going to be at the beginning of the space, and the mount point is root set already, and we're going to use this as ext4, and we're going to click on continue. we are going to come on done setting up the partition and then continue. And we have our root partition. Now we want to create a swap area, so we're going to click on free space again, create a new partition, and it's going to be 2 gigs. 2 gigs is fine. I allocated 2 gigs of RAM in VM. If you have 8 gigs, you want to give 8 gigs of area for swap. If you have 4 gigs, swap is usually the amount of RAM you have. So I allocated 2 gigs of RAM in the VM, so I'm going to give 2 gigs of RAM. So we're going to click on continue, and this is going to be primary again. I don't have any other dual boot or triple boot options here, and this is going to be at the end of the space. We're going to click on continue, and the mount point here, we are going to use this as, you want to click on continue and swap area. So once you do this, you get swap area, and you want to do done setting up the partition. This will be created here, and we're going to click on the amount of whatever amount of free space is left. Click on continue, create a new partition, use all of that. This is going to be primary again. We have no issues with dual or triple boot, so click on continue. We're going to use it as home. It's already recognized. Done setting up the partition, continue, and that is done. And once this is done, finish partitioning and write changes to disk and continue. So once again, we created a boot partition, a root partition, a home, and a swap partition, right? So this is it. We will click on continue and click on yes. We want to make changes to disk, and this will partition disk, and once that's done, it will install the system. So this is going to take some time, around 5 to 10 minutes, depending on your amount of RAM and the speed of your processor. And on basis of that, I will see you when the Grub installation prompt comes. It will ask you whether you want to install Grub or not, and we want to install Grub, so we'll just wait for this to finish. Okay, now so it is installing Grub bootloader for us. And it will ask you if you want to install Grub bootloader, which we want to do. So you're going to click on yes and continue. And we want to select the device on which we want to install Grub bootloader. So in most cases, if you are on in a VM, of course it is /dev/sda. If you are on a machine, on a physical machine, it's also going to be /dev/sda in most cases, unless you have an SSD and a HDD both in a computer. So if you have an HDD, it's going to be /dev/sd. You can select that, and you want to click on continue. So you want to make sure you want to select that particular hard disk in which you installed Boss Linux. So you want to click on continue, and Grub will be installed. Once that's done, it will ask for a reboot prompt. So now the installation is complete, and if you are doing this on a physical hard drive, you want to remove your USB device. In VM, the installer already automatically removes the loaded ISO file. So once that is done, you just want to click on continue, and it will reboot. And once it reboots, you will be prompted by the Boss Linux Grub. So once everything is finished, you reboot your system, you'll be greeted by the login screen. You can type in your username and your password, and once it boots up fully, it will be full screen on the VM. And of course, in your physical installation, it will be like a normal distribution, like a normal operating system. So we'll just wait for the screen to come. So there it is, guys. We have Boss Linux running, and this is how the process is. So I hope you were able to install Boss Linux. If you have any doubts, please do ask me in the comment section. If you like the video, please do subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a nice day.